Since I was 10 years old, I can remember wanting to work in film production. Yep, that's me. And if you had told me then that I would be going to Emerson College to pursue a career in cinematography, I wouldn't have believed it. But before I embarked on my freshman year at Emerson, I wanted to find out just what I was getting myself into.
Hi, so I'm Derek Reisner. I'm the special projects producer here at the Needham Channel.
My name is Mark Mandel, and I'm the executive director of the Needham Channel.
So my name is Mike Levin. I'm the programming manager here at the Needham Channel.
Yes, I'm Keith Barberia. I'm the vice president of technology and operations for the Boston Media Center.
I always loved television ever since I was a little kid, and while a lot of the attention is focused in front of the camera, I always was kind of interested in how things got made.
Sure, it's actually my second love. I didn't think this is what I wanted to do. I was more into acting and wanted to be a performer, but also had life and career goals and thought achieving those goals might be tough as an actor. So picked television as maybe the second most creative outlet. My career took me in a different direction, but it's been a great run. I went to a accepted students day at Hofstra University, and they brought me into a room like this, and I saw the equipment and the cameras, and I was kind of hooked from there on.
And I volunteered with the Needham Channel all throughout high school. It's how I got my introduction. I ended up going to college for television and radio, video production, ended up getting a master's in broadcast journalism, but it all started by helping out at the Needham Channel.
You know what, I think when I was younger, probably my late teens, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and the idea of, I wasn't necessarily thinking television, but I was definitely thinking kind of either movies or television or something along that area. It was kind of strange because I think my original passion was more towards stuff that's more fictional and dramatized and that type of thing. But one of the ideas that someone pitched at me is, hey, you want to get started, just volunteer at some local access station because it's free. I was like, okay. And so there was the Needham Channel right up the street. I mean, I'm like 2 blocks from here. And I was like, okay, that'll be a good way to learn some skills.
I already had a love of television because I always, I wanted to be on camera. And I started working with a camera, and just seeing that visual media was a lot of fun. And so when I when I came back to the Needham Channel and I started becoming a reporter, I realized how much I enjoyed telling a story and finding a narrative. So I had that sort of combined, love of being on camera as an anchor, wanting to tell a story as a reporter, but also enjoying the post-production process and the production process of running a camera, doing the editing, coming up with graphics, just doing all of the steps involved in being a television reporter, television anchor, television personality, and producer. It connected for me right away, and once I had that full experience working with the Needham Channel in high school, after college, going to grad school, it just made so much sense.
Well, the biggest thing that has really changed over the last 30 years has been, of course, the expansion of the internet, what that means for how people watch television, and the impact of social media on television.
I've been in the industry for 29 years, 26 with NBC. And when I started, we were primarily using large format videotape. It was tape that was 3/4 inch wide, or a tape format called Betacam. So there was no file video, there was no sending video, from computer to computer or over the internet. So today, we're doing file-based video, as you know. We are transmitting live video using the public cell towers, the same way you make a phone call or FaceTime with a friend. We're also sending video back to the station that way.
I mentioned before that in the 90s, there was not a whole heck of a lot of jobs within the industry. Nowadays, it is a much different picture than that, because social media, video production, that sort of a thing, is almost a part of every industry. You know, it's a large part of what is done out there, so there is a lot of opportunity that is opening on up for people who are interested in that realm.
It's really changed our ability to gather news and content and share video and collaborate, which is important because the biggest change over my time, other than being standard definition to high definition and now 4K video, the biggest change is really people like you and the way you consume video, which you keep changing on us, really, to be honest. And it's, what device do you want to watch it on, and when do you want to watch it, and how do you want to watch it? So over the years, we went from having the 4 major networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, and a handful of cable channels, to hundreds of channels and all these different streaming platforms and websites. There was no YouTube 29 years ago, right? And today we have to create enough content and put it on enough platforms so you can find our content where you want it, when you want it, and how you want it. That's been the biggest change, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. The technical operations team is the team that takes the vision from the content teams and brings it to life. We're behind the scenes. If you see us on camera or you hear of us, we're probably having a bad day, right? We fix problems, we execute the shows, we're directing, we're running equipment. We have engineers that are fixing technology or buying and adding new technology. We develop new workflows and efficiencies. We're also in charge of the facilities, safety, security. Really, we just take everything and we're the ones that make it work.
So I pretty much have what I like to consider 2 main goals to my job. The first side is running the nonprofit organization that manages this place. And I do that with the help of a board of directors who help tell me which direction to go in, what direction they want this studio, what role they want this studio to play within the community. So that is a big part of my job. The second part of my job is really making it possible for my staff to do what they were hired to do. So we are very lucky here in that we have a very involved board that has wanted to really grow local media within the community. They see the need, they see the value. And because of that, we have a very rich staff, better than in most other communities. And what I figure my role to be is laying the table for them so that they can go do what they need to do and produce the types of programs that the community does want.
It's a big responsibility to be handed a project like this, and it was an honor to do it. My focus was on being a great leader. You have to admit that you don't have all the answers. If you ever, as a leader, feel like you do, or that you're the smartest person in the room, you're doing it wrong and you have the wrong team. So my focus first was to build a strong team and have them with me, and then trust them to do their part of the project and to use their expertise to succeed. I was their support, I was their guide. Sometimes I was the one to push, but in general, I relied mostly on my team to succeed. My second focus was on making this an inclusive process as much as I could in every opportunity. I wanted to make sure the staff felt like they were part of the process, that we weren't doing this around them, that they had a say and an opinion and had ownership of the facility, of the choices we made when they walked in here, and make sure it was teamwork. I think those 2 are super important. As a leader, though, I also had to set clear expectations and set high goals for us to achieve. As a team, we knew what success would look like when we were done. There'd be no ambiguity on the day of the launch, are we there or not? Because we've been talking about those goals from the very beginning and marching to them together. Finally, I think, and this might not be what you expect, we tried to have fun. We took the work seriously, but we never took ourselves too seriously. In the end, this is just television, right? We're not doing brain surgery, right? It's not that serious. It doesn't need to be. We could be serious about the work, but we celebrated our wins and we made sure to have fun and celebrate along the way.
Mm-hmm. I'd say the most probably ambitious documentary was when I went to China. I get told by Mark that one of our board members wants us to do a documentary piece on these school kids going over to China, because I guess it was supposed to be the first as far as anyone knew, it was the first time elementary age students from America had taken an exchange trip to China, because they've come from China to here, but never students from here to China. I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds rather ambitious. I was like, how much time do you have? It's like, they're leaving in 2 months. I was like, what? Like, it was funny about how much looking back on it, it felt like, how the heck did we even think we could pull this off? But somehow it worked. And it took a while afterwards to finally put together, but it actually turned out really great. And
one of the things that I had wanted to do for a long period of time leading up to the town's tercentennial is I wanted to do a full-scale documentary. Now, in the local media sphere, that's not necessarily something that was easy to do. In fact, very few stations do full-scale documentaries. Again, thanks to the support of my board, I got lined up with 2 great co-producers. One was Gloria Grice of the Needham History Center and Museum. She had all the historical facts set up, and she's a wonderful person to work with. And then the other person was a great honor for me to work with, Catherine Dietz, who is a person who had produced documentaries for PBS. And she really taught me how to go about approaching such a large-scale project, and she had many industry connections that made that project an easy thing to do. And it was just a pleasure to do it, but it was all-consuming. We had originally wanted it to debut back in 2011, but because of the amount of production work that had to go on into it and the amount of energy that went on into that project, and it was only the 3 of us really that were putting that together, it ended up taking an extra year to get that done, and it debuted in March of 2012. And it's still, probably in my career, probably the video project that I'm most proud of. And I would do it again. Yeah. I would easily do it again if I had the time.
Since I've been here, I've produced a lot of different specials about the Needham-Wellesley Thanksgiving football rivalry. And there was one in particular we did about the game from 1994 when I was a junior, that Wellesley had won 6 games in a row, and that year Needham was up and coming. Wellesley was a perennial state championship contender, if not winner. And Needham pulled off one of the biggest upsets. They forced overtime, and then they pulled this trick play that was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Well, I happened to be in touch with the guy who caught the pass, who was a year older than me, and I said to him, I'm like, what would you think about doing like a special where we go back and watch that game? He's like, yeah, I'd love to. And I had already talked with the old coach, Roy Johan, and our old play-by-play announcer from that time, Scott Stevens, and they all said, yeah, they'd love to do it. And then Dan Scalia, who was the player who caught the pass, he happened to be in touch with the guy who threw him the pass, who was one of the other captains, Dan Hopkin. He was like, well, I talked to Hop, and he wants to do it too. And he lived in like Texas. I'm like, well, how's he gonna do that? He's like, he's gonna come in special just for this production when we recorded it. So we got to watch the game, and you know, it was just one of the most fun nights of television I've ever had, because you know, when we started, they sort of were not sure they would remember everything. And as we watched, you could see their eyes just light up, watching it, talking about it, remembering how they came up with certain plays. So those kinds of things are just really fun. And that particular night was probably the most special night I've ever, we didn't do it live, it was recorded, but it was a very special night for me.
I think it's probably fair to think about an event and how we solve it with technology, but in technical operations, our job really is to support people. And sometimes technology is what they need to solve whatever challenge is in front of them, but sometimes they just need support. And in tech ops, we do whatever it takes to remove the obstacles that are in front of the staff so they could do their job no matter what department they're in, from our sales team to our human resources team, and then down to the content creators in news and sports. So it could be anything from installing a piece of technology to dealing with a really terrible news story. And you know, if I had to pick 2 moments that were the most challenging on the content side, I would say 9/11 was a very difficult. The day was difficult, but the coverage and the impact of staff lasted months. and that was, very, very hard. And a close second to that was the Newtown shooting in Connecticut. Seeing stories and interviews of parents of children that were massacred has a deep impact to you personally. A story like 9/11, everyone knew someone who was impacted, or some of us knew people that were directly impacted. And, you still have to do your job. As a news organization, it's mission critical to get that type of information out to the viewer, whether it's those two stories I mentioned or severe weather that could be dangerous to the public. Despite what's happening to our own families, our own place of work, we still have to keep our heads down and get that information out there, solve the problems, work in our day-to-day as normal, and navigate that. And as tech ops, sometimes it's as little as a piece of technology, or we're bringing in grief counselors, or rearranging schedules last minute to give people the breaks they need, or who knows, right? It's all hands on deck in solving any problem we have to as tech ops. And, it's challenging in ways you can't predict. And certainly you don't learn as someone young in the industry when you think you're coming in to operate cameras or support technology, that is a piece that you'll have to deal with. On a less serious side, if you just want to focus on technology, the most fun news story that was really impactful was a full New York City blackout in 2003. At 4 p.m., all the lights in New York City, Queens, New York, Long Island went out. And it was, in retrospect, in the moment it was stressful, but in retrospect, pretty amazing to be part of such a great group of talented technology professionals that came together and figured out how to get the Today Show and Dateline and Nightly News and all the important network news programs that we rely on the air from the street or a different room or off a generator that we rolled up on the street. We were doing things that you never thought you'd have to even think of. And to get that done was that was pretty amazing. And then I slept for like 3 days after that.
From an industry point of view, the toughest thing is really kind of working out the financial aspect of how to operate a local studio. We are very lucky in the nonprofit realm in that we have had a longstanding relationship with the cable industry. They have really been responsible for providing the funding for local access endeavors. We're now at a stage in the world where how people watch video is changing. There are a lot more people streaming than there were in the past, and we're finding that cable revenues are beginning to drop, which means our revenues are beginning to drop. So it is my biggest challenge probably right now to envision how we can move forward and still grow within the community when we are in a tightening financial environment. Now, how we counter that is, again, thanks to the long-term vision of my board of directors. They've always been kind of a step ahead of the industry, and they have really set into motion long-range plans to really kind of smooth over the bumps up until the point where the industry kind of rights itself on a federal level.
I did a documentary called Because They Said Yes. But when I say it wasn't really me. It was really a volunteer that has been around for a number of years here, Cece Gonacanto. And this was like her passion project. So for her, this was a passion project, kind of like the Milling Favor game was for me. And since I had most of like the understanding of like the technical aspects, and she had kind of like the idea of like how she wanted to write it and how she wanted to put it together, we kind of teamed up to do that. And so that was an interesting challenge in terms of like making sure that I was helping her, but making sure it was also still her vision, not mine.
In the past, we did a lot of volunteer-produced series, and over the years, as the model for community access television has changed, there aren't as many of those types of producers around. In fact, about a year before COVID, we didn't have any volunteer-produced series, and we were lucky that right as COVID was happening, we had some people who got interested, like Matt Robinson, the host of the Writer's Block. I think that the biggest challenge is locating people who have an interest in telling a story or getting people's stories out there and seeing that they would be really good on camera and just following up with them and being like, okay, well, maybe you want to do this, maybe you want to do that. And it's a lot of sort of problem solving and figuring out what makes the most sense and how it sort of relays best for television. And it's fun because, again, like I love telling stories, and getting other people to flesh out their stories is something that is, it's very fulfilling.
Mm.
Good question. It's challenging, right? Because this industry has always been one that changes over time. And in the last 10 years, it's changing at a pace that's almost too much to manage. A good leader is always learning. So I'm reading constantly, good old-fashioned paper magazines, trade websites. I attend industry conferences and conventions. We have good relationships with our key vendors that make our equipment and our software to make sure we are with them, not just on what they're developing, but that they are developing the things we need at the same time. And I'm listening to the viewers. We do research for them to tell us what kind of content they want and how they want to consume it. So we are developing the right content and putting it in the right places.
Well, the way that we do that is really by opening ourselves up to the community. When the industry started, and the whole purpose of the industry is to provide a local voice for the town in which we operate. And part of that has come through something called public access television, where we train people who come on in. If they have the idea for a program, we give them the resources in which to get started, and then have them produce whatever they feel is relevant to them, whatever they feel is relevant to the community. Where we have altered from that somewhat is that Continental Cablevision, which was the original cable provider here in Needham, they adopted what was called a local origination model, where staff members were also allowed to produce programming. And the traditional places where we put our efforts are in municipal meetings, sports, and then of course community programming or public access programming. And those have always been very strongly tied to the community in which we operate. So again, what I would really envision us doing is finding a way to move on forward and grow, continue to grow within this community. I think that the ways in that we've contributed have been really worthwhile. We hear great feedback from the community. Everyone is very happy with how we represent the town, both on the government side, from the resident side, and commercial side. And I really want to concentrate on moving that on forward. We want to be a good community partner, and that's the area that I'm going to concentrate on moving on forward.
I think, one of the things that's been great as we recording this in the spring of 2024 is that because of COVID, we used to have before COVID, we had a lot of high school volunteers and a lot of kids who would just come in and, work on our newscast, work on our sports broadcast, work on different projects of their own. We had a really good system of kids just like coming in, they have to, do hours for their community service. Okay, we can work at the local television station. We didn't even at that time have, some kids were interested, but, we didn't have as many who were as passionate about it, but we had a few that really were into it. Because of COVID, that sort of cut that off. We would have the occasional kid, but in the 2023-2024 school year, we have a bunch of people like yourself who are just so passionate about it. And so for me, what I want to do is just keep on raising the interest in the community, because we're doing so much more now between our social media. Instagram is huge now. And now our Needham Local news website that we started, needhamlocal.org. It's just, there's so many opportunities now for us to, show people what's going on in Needham, and for kids to learn about television, about, broadcast writing, news writing, and video production, that it's to me, it's like the most excited I have been in a job, even more so when I was working in local sports. Because after a while, local sports kind of gets it sort of gets repetitive and you're covering the same stuff. And every once in a while there was something big that you would do. But in this job, every time the trivia bee comes around, I get excited. Every time Thanksgiving comes around, the 4th of July parade, when Matt Robinson says, hey, I want to do an episode. We have a fellow who does a real estate series called Real Money Moves. He's like, Mike, I want to do a new episode. Okay, Connor, absolutely. Let's get you in here. So every time people come to me with an idea, I get excited about what we can do. And so just continuing to raise that and do more and, continuing to teach students like you about television and video production, that's exciting to me.
I hope to achieve, let's think, what do I hope to achieve? Well, I'd say number one, I hope to, every time you make a project, you're always trying to figure out what you could have done better and how you can improve that. And some things you can, and other things you kind of have to accept are just going to be the way they are. So I think, number one is always, trying to figure out ways to be better, but also kind of do things easier. Like I think I can make things quicker than I used to, but you're always going to be limited by the fact that if you have other people involved that aren't employees, they have their own lives and their own schedules, so you kind of have to be flexible with that. But I guess always getting better at what we're doing, finding new things, kind of pursuing into new projects, because we have a few project ideas for me that coming up in the future that I'm kind of excited for, and I'm looking forward to. They're different from what I've done before, but they're also kind of the same, and I'm kind of excited to see how they turn out, and hopefully you'll all be able to see them soon.
Ooh, you're going to make me think for this, aren't you? Particularly rewarding. I would say that probably the easiest thing for me to go to is an example, again, of how we're trying to keep our operations relative to the community in which we operate. One of the things that we've been facing over the past decade or so is the slow drain from community newspapers and community reporting. Because we have a local newscast that has been operating since 1987, we've kind of been a hedge against that. But together, me and the board have put together a new initiative this past year, which would help translate that into a new medium, of course, being the online environment. And from that, we've kind of launched the Needham Local initiative, which is kind of a companion to the Needham channel, but with a news forward type step. And I'd say one of the greatest pleasures that I've had this past year, and one of the most rewarding of my career, was being able to hire a staff print reporter to kind of help go on into that. And with her help, produced and edited this Needham Local online newsletter, which has been great.
I'd say I think the experience that I found the most memorable was definitely going to China, which I think is kind of weird. I don't know. It was kind of hard. It's kind of hard to describe why. I mean, most memorable is kind of hard to say. Maybe it wasn't the most memorable, but it's the one that comes to mind the most, is just being there with the kids and enjoying sort of the experience with them, and kind of knowing that what you were doing was, in the moment, was something that was, kind of historical, because again, it was the first time, elementary school age students going from America to China like that, and just kind of feeding off the energy of the kids and the parents and what they were enjoying. So even though I wasn't really a part of it in the sense of, it wasn't my kid, I wasn't a kid, I didn't have a kid there, but, the way they were kind of like, I still felt part of the group. We all did that went over there, and I think that was probably one of the more memorable experiences, and because it was genuinely more fun than I thought it would be.
It's 26 years, so I have a lot to choose from. I've been lucky to experience some pretty amazing things. So the best I can do is bring it down to 3, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. I was the project leader for the Today Show in 2006, rebuilding their control room and their studio, and upgrading from standard definition to high definition. I still feel old when I say that, but it was an amazing project, high profile, and a show that millions of people watch every morning. So that was, definitely a highlight in my career. I got to go to Connecticut and rebuild the TV station at the NBC station in Connecticut, a brand new building there for that staff. And boy, did they need it. The old facility was a broken down schoolhouse, basically. It was bad. And that was really amazing. And I met some wonderful people there and had, lifelong friendships. And then to get to come to Boston in 2016 and help launch the new NBC station here, NBC 10, was great. And then right on the heels of that, to be the project leader for the amazing NBCU Boston Media Center, freshest in my mind, but still just an amazing opportunity.
Probably one of the most rewarding aspects of my job, having grown up in Needham, is it having given me the opportunity to learn how the town really operates. When you grow up within a town, you see it from one perspective. It is everything that occurs there is happening automatically. It's a system that's well in place, and you kind of enjoy the benefits from that. When you come back and look at it from our angle, from working within the community, from telling stories from within the community, you get to learn about the tremendous amount of work that goes into making all that happen. You meet some fantastic people who give of their time, either professionally as a career or, more importantly, on a town basis as a volunteer. The fact that they're willing to give up their time and effort in order to make something special has been tremendously rewarding. The volunteer aspect of our job here has been one of those things that has really driven that home. I mean, most of the people who you see coming in through that door are doing so just because of a sheer love of the art, or because of an intense curiosity, or wanting to give something back to their community, and I think that's fantastic.
It makes me think of that line, the journey isn't where we went, it's the friends we made along the way. But that's kind of true, in a way. It's kind of true, because I think one of the things about working at a local access station is you have some people that stay around for a while, but I'd say most people, whether they be volunteers or even employees, it tends to be a lot of turnover. And sometimes that can be a little hard sometimes when you get used to people and then someone else moves in. But, I think in the end it becomes more rewarding because you get to meet so many people and that are excited about the same things you are. And, sometimes they're different from you and not excited about the same things, but, you kind of learn to adapt to that as well. But I think that definitely is rewarding, and to meet all those people coming through here, different ideas. And it also, it's like people from like different, age ranges and walks of life. You got high school kids, and then you got retired people, and it's like, they come in with their different experiences and for different reasons, but we all kind of figure out how to make television happen.
I think one of the most rewarding things about it, again, is just like being able to impart my knowledge to people, but also like to have fun in your job, because not every job that you have in this world is going to be fun. I can honestly say that every job I've had in TV has been fun. I mean, there's obviously challenges in every job, and there's no doubt that the Needham Channel, being the programming manager here, is the best job I've ever had and probably ever will. So just like appreciating that, and when you're able to have an opportunity to have fun.
It's a team sport. I think that's the best analogy to give you. Nothing in television is rarely something done by yourself in television. It's always a group of people working together to achieve a goal. A control room is full of people, a studio is full of people, a newsroom is full of hundreds of people. Field teams are in pairs at least, if not more. Right? You create wonderful relationships. You experience some amazing things. You have the front row seat to the biggest events in the world. Sometimes they're the most tragic events in the world, but either way, you are experiencing it together. We get to cover sports championships. Hopefully, we'll be saying that about the Celtics in a few weeks, right? And when you experience those things together, you create relationships and friendships that last for a lifetime. And I know my answer is not about TV specifically, but if you're asking what the most rewarding thing is, I've made, I was gonna say friends, but truly family that will be with me the rest of my life through this career.
For somebody starting out within the industry, what I would say is, look to see where you want to contribute. There are a lot of opportunities out there. Take the time, kind of go through, play with different aspects of the industry, see if there's something that calls out for you in particular. So for instance, if you like editing, find opportunities to edit. If you like writing, find opportunities to write. If you like shooting, find opportunities to shoot. Or if you like being on air, which I do not, but if you do like being on air, try to find those opportunities too and make those own opportunities for yourself. Once you have settled on a course, then you'll automatically find a way to make it happen for yourself. There will be things that open themselves up to you and opportunities, and then don't be afraid to jump.
What advice would I give? Well, I would say, I think the thing about media, television, and all that is that there's probably a lot of ways to get into it. Like, I don't think there's necessarily one way. I mean, I probably was a little bit unusual in terms of how I got the job here, but I think probably the best piece of advice is just to figure out what you can do now. Don't worry about like getting a job with ABC or something like right off the bat. Just figure out like what can you do in the place that you are at, and you don't have to go out and find something that's going to cost you tons of money and get yourself in debt or whatever. Just figure out what you can do in the place you are, and that's pretty much what I did. And so far I think it worked out pretty well.
And the advice I give to people who want to get into the business is just to be patient with it and to learn as many skills as you possibly can. The guy who was more or less my position when I was in high school, he had a different name. He wasn't the program manager. He was something else. He was a fellow by the name of Peter Strutelsky. And he told me, because I wanted to go to school for undergrad for, broadcast and be on air. And he said to me, he goes, listen, Mike, you have the personality that you can pick up being on air at any point. But what you need to do is learn how to do all the things behind the scenes. You need to learn how to use a camera, how to edit, how to do audio, how to do lighting, like all the other things having to do with television and production behind the scenes, directing, producing. Learn to do that. And then once you have all that down, to go and be on the air and figure that out, which I think that was a really, really valuable piece of advice, because it sort of ignited a passion in me that I didn't know I wanted to do. And then when I came back to the Needham Channel after college and I was volunteering, and the news producer at that point was like, okay, I want you to start learning how to be a reporter. Just picking up as many pieces along the way of information and advice from people. And when people teach you something, there's always a use for it, at least in television. It's so much fun to see all that come together, all the different pieces. So just learn it all. Learn as much as you can. And if you have an idea for a YouTube series, something that you just want to I'm interested in XYZ, do it. Have fun with it, because YouTube is something that's, it's sort of taken away from local television, but it also enhances local television, because we can start doing different things that people are doing on YouTube and just throw it out there and be like, hey, we're doing a short little piece instead of doing a half-hour program. It's we can do a shorter piece on XYZ and just have fun with it. That's what I would